There are over 45,000 Christian denominations in the world today. Most of them read the same Bible, one book, 45,000 groups. And that gap reveals something crucial about how the Bible gets studied in universities right now. The story begins with a crisis of authority 500 years ago, a crisis that produced the dominant method of biblical scholarship and then exposed that method's limits. Start with the system it replaced. Before the Reformation, the Catholic Church held interpretive authority over the Bible. Divine revelation flowed into scripture, specifically the Latin Vulgate translation, and the Church, meaning the Pope, bishops, and the councils, functioned as the authoritative gatekeeper. They determined what scripture meant. Believers received that interpretation from above. The system didn't eliminate disagreement entirely, but it contained disagreement within institutional boundaries. Meanwhile, Renaissance humanists like Erasmus had begun consulting the original Hebrew and the Greek manuscripts, planting seeds of textual scrutiny that would soon matter enormously. Then the Reformation happened, and the entire system broke. Martin Luther, John Calvin, and other reformers rejected the Pope's authority over interpretation. Their replacement principle, Sola scriptura, scripture alone. The Bible itself, they argued, was clear enough for any faithful reader to understand. They championed what they called the sensus literalis, the literal sense of the text. But here's a crucial distinction most people miss. The Reformers' literal sense is not what a modern historian means by original meaning. For Luther and Calvin, the literal sense of a psalm addressing a Davidic king could also literally refer to Jesus Christ. Prophetic fulfillment was part of the plain meaning. A modern historical critic rejects that move entirely. For the modern scholar, the meaning of that psalm is limited to what the ancient author could have intended. A specific Judean king in a specific century. No Jesus, no prophecy. The Reformers' literal was thicker, more theologically loaded than anything a modern university seminar room would accept. But there was a problem, a big one. The test of sola scriptura was whether faithful readers would converge on the same meaning. They did not. Within decades of Luther's break in 1517, the Reformation splintered. Lutherans went one direction, Calvinists and Presbyterians went another, Anabaptists and Mennonites rejected infant baptism entirely. The Church of England split off in 1534, Baptists emerged in the 1600s, Methodists in the 1730s. Each group claimed sola scriptura. Each group reached different conclusions on baptism, the Eucharist, church governance, predestination. By the 18th century, the pattern was undeniable. Scripture alone could not settle disputes without an agreed-upon method for reading it. The authority vacuum the Reformation created was still wide open, and it pointed toward the 19th century with a single urgent need, a new way to fix the problem. This is the crisis that created the historical critical method. In 19th century German universities, Tübingen, Göttingen, Berlin, scholars developed a systematic approach to biblical interpretation. The historical critical method means recovering what the original author meant in the original historical context using tools like philology, archaeology, and textual comparison. Scholars asked what Paul intended when writing to the Romans, or what the psalmist meant in the 10th century BCE. The mission: strip away later theological layers and recover the original meaning. This was explicitly a Protestant project, stabilize doctrine and ethics by grounding them in a method anyone could apply regardless of denomination. Replace church authority with scholarly method as the neutral arbiter. Notice the structural parallel. Where the Catholic Church once sat as the gatekeeper between scripture and believers, the historical critical method now took its place. Scholarly consensus replaced institutional authority. The shape of the system didn't change. Only the occupant did. The method promised consensus. It did not deliver. By the late 20th century, scholars trained in the same methods at the same institutions routinely arrived at different interpretations. Take Romans chapter 1, verses 26 through 27. Some historical critics read this passage as a clear condemnation of homosexual acts, Paul naming them as inherently sinful. Other scholars, using identical critical tools, read the same verses as a description of the consequences of idolatry, not a statement about sexuality per se. The divergence comes from different reconstructions of Paul's audience, different weight given to Greco-Roman social conventions, different assumptions about what Paul meant by the word nature, same text, same method, same training, different conclusions. The historical critical method did not eliminate the interpreter. It relocated disagreement from the church pew to the seminar room. This recognition opened the door to new approaches: feminist criticism, liberation theology, African American biblical interpretation, Latino and Latina readings, queer theology, post-colonial criticism, literary analysis. Each brings questions the historical critical method was never designed to ask, questions about whose voices a text silences, who benefits from a particular reading, how empire shapes interpretation, what assumptions about gender and sexuality lie embedded in the text. These methods don't replace historical criticism. They build on it and extend beyond it. Historical criticism remains the bedrock of academic biblical studies. Every serious scholar learns it, but it is a floor, not a ceiling. The Bible's significance extends far beyond what any historical author intended. Milton's Paradise Lost reimagines Genesis in ways no ancient Israelite could have foreseen. Dante's Divine Comedy weaves scripture into a medieval cosmological epic. Flannery O'Connor embeds biblical violence and grace into 20th century Southern fiction. Artists from Caravaggio to Kara Walker have made the Bible's images do new cultural work. The Bible is not only a historical document, it is a living text whose meaning keeps being made. The historical critical method was born from a crisis of authority, and it was a genuine achievement. But it turned out to be another chapter in the same story: the search for a single, stable meaning that everyone must accept. That search hasn't ended, it may never end. And understanding why it hasn't is the first step toward reading the Bible with your eyes open.